Welcome back. I'm Ian Masters, and this is Background Briefing, available 24/7 at backgroundbriefing.org. And joining us now is Robert Baer, one of the most accomplished agents in CIA history and the winner of the Career Intelligence Medal. He's the author of 4 New York Times bestsellers, including Sleeping with the Devil, How Washington Sold Our Soul for Saudi Crude. He's considered one of the world's foremost authorities on the Middle East and is an intelligence and national security affairs analyst for CNN. His latest book is The Fourth Man, The Hunt for a KGB Spy at the Top of the CIA and the Rise of Putin's Russia. Welcome to Background Briefing, Robert Baer.
Thanks.
Well, thanks for joining us, Bob. And Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, had a press conference today with Biden and is addressing a joint session of Congress tonight. And, of course, the reason I think that Biden invited him over here was to shore up the Congress and in the hope that they'll pass the $45 billion package in the NDAA vote. And there is some resistance in the House expressed by Kevin McCarthy, who said the new Republican House is not going to give a blank check to Ukraine. But the most prominent voice in the pro-Putin caucus, if you will, here in the United States is Fox News' Tucker Carlson. So how influential do you think he is? He certainly has influence over the House Republicans, does he not?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the whole right wing is influenced by him. I mean, people tune in to Fox, listen to Tucker Carlson. It just sort of feeds all their biases and prejudices. And, it's the same Trump line is that we don't get anything out of NATO. We don't get anything out of places like Ukraine. Why get involved? It's going to lead to a nuclear war. Ukrainians can't possibly win. And for them, Putin is their natural ally. I mean, you see this shading over into Russia Today, to, various right-wing blogs. I don't need to name them, but I keep on hearing these things over and over against the same arguments. That Putin's never going to run out of missiles. He's going to flatten Ukraine. It's a wasted conflict. The weapons are all being stolen. They're for sale on the net. It's just crazy stuff like that. It's pure Russian propaganda, because this is exactly what Putin wants: is a Republican Congress to cut aid, and then he's got a chance of taking Ukraine and God knows what else from there.
So let's talk about the influence of Tucker Carlson and more importantly, what influences him. Why is this son of a rich man Carlson's father ran Swanson's frozen food company, and then his mother was also very wealthy, and then his father then remarried another wealthy woman. So this guy comes from a lot of money. So he can't be doing this for money. So your prior employer, the CIA, have this acronym for why people spy for the CIA or for the KGB, for that matter. MICE, M-I-C-E, money, ideology, compromise, and ego. Which of those 4 do you think applies to Tucker Carlson in terms of being Putin's number one spokesperson here in the United States?
I think it's almost definitely ideology. His views of the world align with Putin's. It just is in the 20s and 30s, the left allied with the Russians, with the Soviet Union and Stalin. A lot of those people that ended up working for the KGB were ideologues, and their whole family and all the spy networks at Los Alamos and in the military, at the State Department, and even the White House, they looked at Russia as sort of their natural ally. And I think we're seeing the same thing, only it's the right now, is, and so much of it is based on this subtle racism. And they look at Putin as a religious figure, almost trying to revive, a Christian Russia. Holding off the Tartar hordes and crazy stuff like this. I mean, it's just not factual, but it's emotional. So, Tucker Carlson is going on about the border about what a great job Musk is doing with Twitter, and it's all part and parcel of the same package, and they don't really distinguish. I mean, when these cities are being bombarded and civilians are being massacred and tortured, they just don't see it. They've got blinders on. And they also have characterized, this is pure Russian propaganda, the Ukrainians as Nazis.
So let's talk then about what Tucker Carlson himself said recently, in fact, a week ago Tuesday, on the podcast of Tulsi Gabbard's, where he made the most amazing statements about, first of all, and I'm literally quoting Tucker Carlson talking about himself, he said that he had tried to interview a Russian President, Vladimir Putin, and he felt that the NSA prevented him from doing that. And then he went on to say there are members of Congress who are controlled by the intelligence agencies. I'm not speculating on this. I know. I lived in Washington, D.C. for 35 years. I know this, Carlson insisted. And then he went on to say that a very high-ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee told him after drinking that NSA spies on the lawmakers' text messages. And then Carlson went on to recount he had an angry exchange with Representative Michael McCall, Republican of Texas, who's on the, I think he'll be the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, who accused him of being a Russian agent on the basis of information provided by the congressman's intelligence briefers. And then Carlson says, and I got into an argument with him once last year on the phone. He had told somebody that I was a Russian agent, and I was outraged. And then he said, I really used some bad language. And then McCall, when confronted, said, that's what the intel briefers told me, that you were working with the Russians. And then Carlson shot back, that's what the intel briefers told you? You believe your effing intel briefers? Like, how old are you, son? You're being manipulated by your intel briefers. Duh. And then he went on to say, I'm an American and all this ridiculous patriotic defense. But McCall, the congressman, then told Carlson that the intelligence officials had, quote, all kinds of corroborating evidence proving that the Fox News host Tucker Carlson was a Russian agent. So it's extraordinary that Carlson would tell this story and open up this possibility, which may be a real possibility. You know, Trump does that as well. Often guilty people inadvertently bring up issues that indicate that maybe they're guilty.
What you do in a case like that is if you're taking direction from Moscow, and what no doubt has happened is the National Security Agency has intercepted texts and phone calls to the Kremlin, who's giving him instructions, saying this is the important issue, whatever it may be on Ukraine. Of course, that's what they're focused on. So they can see direction coming from Moscow. They're not listening to Tucker Carlson's phone calls in the United States or Fox or, with Murdoch or the rest of that. No, that's not happening. It's the communications with a foreign government. And by the way, when I was in the CIA, I have seen communications between journalists, prominent journalists, taking direction and even being helped in property deals with a foreign government, a hostile government. So this isn't the first time that somebody in the press has cut a deal with a foreign country. But the fact that McCall was briefed, you just don't do this. You don't take somebody like Tucker Carlson, a celebrity, brief them unless you have a smoking gun. I've heard independently, I've seen this article, independently, somebody who'd been very high in the intelligence communities, when Tucker Carlson came up and, he's a Russian agent. Now, I wasn't in a position to ask him why he thinks that, so I can only speculate that Tucker Carlson is just taking orders from Moscow. That doesn't mean he takes money. It doesn't mean he passes documents. It is not a violation of the Espionage Act to do the bidding of a foreign government in terms of propaganda. It's just not. I mean, RT, and you go right down Sputnik and all the rest of them, that were these people, my former colleagues that work for these Russian groups. It's pure propaganda, and they don't mind, and they take Russian money. In the cases of my former colleagues.
You mean Phil Giraldi and people like that? Veteran intelligence professionals for sanity.
Yeah, and it's crazy. You can't ally with a government that we're about ready to go to war with. We are at war essentially with Russia. So to ally with Moscow is just sort of unheard of, or should be unheard of. But this is what's going on. But the fact that Tucker Carlson has come out and had been told that he's considered a Russian agent is very, very indicative of this man's loyalties is not with Washington, D.C. or our government.
Well, McCall's not on the Intel committee, but I think McCall said that he had heard it from another congressman who was on the Intel committee. That's my understanding. But do you think Carlson would have been briefed by Russian agents when he spent a week in Hungary? Hungary's awash with Russian agents who, of course, are perfectly welcomed by Orban, the dictator.
It's a gray area. I mean, I wouldn't call what I've read. I wouldn't call Tucker Carlson a spy, but he has signed off on the Russian agenda and taken talking points from it. So the Kremlin sits down, gets talking points, sends them to Tucker Carlson. Sounds good to me, and he hits TV. You'll never see the FBI come after Tucker Carlson. He doesn't need money. He doesn't need anything. It's just he's decided that Putin is somebody to look, authoritarian figure to look up to, and he's taken sides.
Well, again, when I was saying earlier that it seems like in many ways guilty people sometimes admit to stuff and project it onto others, in the interview that Tucker Carlson did a week ago Tuesday with Tulsi Gabbard on her podcast, towards the end, Carlson said that there are a lot of members of Congress are manipulated by the intelligence agency, and they go along with it out of fear that their own vulnerabilities may be exposed. Quote, they know they're being manipulated, and there's pressure points that can be applied on people. I mean, let's just be totally honest. I'm not accusing anyone of anything specifically, but if you have a drinking problem or you have a complicated personal life, and a lot of people do, particularly in D.C., you're vulnerable. So a lot of people in Washington that I know have told me that Tucker Carlson has a drinking problem. So is he talking about himself, or is he talking about, you said earlier that of the MICE, no. He's not, it's more likely ideology, but what about compromise? What about compromat? Could the Russians have something on him?
Could the Russians? Yes, but we haven't seen anything. No, that's the problem. All sorts of compromise. There could be financial dealings with Russian entities, with oligarchs, for instance. I just haven't seen anything, and you can't accuse them of that. And as a matter of control, when it's ideology, you need suggestions. You don't need to control anybody. You don't write them an email and say, do this, do that. The Russians just pick out, because what they're doing is they're very adept at this. They're going through Congress and they're figuring out which Republicans are going to cut aid to Ukraine. So when he gets on TV, he's effectively, appealing to those Republicans, whether it's Jim Jordan or whoever. And this is what's going to save Putin is if we, cut back aid or cut it altogether. Or force some sort of truce on Zelensky, which does not benefit the Ukrainians. Either way, I mean, this January, when Congress, the new Congress comes to power, you're going to see a huge, horrendous fight. And I think they have the ability to cut aid to Ukraine, and they might do it. Because what we're talking about is propaganda. And the propaganda is these weapons they're not going to the defense of Ukraine, they're being sold. And that Ukraine is a corrupt fascist state, which is pure Russian propaganda. And going after Pravi Sector, this militia, this right-wing group, and, even though a couple of those people were clearly, in a joking way wearing Nazi insignia, but in general, this is a nationalist fight for the sovereignty of Ukraine. But anyhow, these subtle messages on an electorate that doesn't understand the fight or what's going on can be manipulated. But going back to the manipulation of congressmen, this goes back to this craziness about the deep state. That would mean that the CIA and the FBI director would be sit down and say, all right, we got to manipulate these congressmen with intelligence, selective intelligence, which is going to change their opinion. And I've never seen anybody in the intelligence community have those power aspirations that they're accusing the CIA and the FBI have. Just doesn't exist. First of all, the FBI can't even handle political intelligence, and especially foreign political intelligence. As for the CIA, they're bureaucrats. They say, all right, they sit around and they parse these intercepts of, Tucker Carlson or whatever they're with Moscow, and they have to pick them up because if intercepts are going to the Kremlin, whether it's American or otherwise, they pick them up. And the way they're disseminated, it says U.S. person, but you can figure out it's Tucker Carlson. And then they sit around and worry over this, and they finally say, all right, let's go brief Congress on this because we have to, we're obligated to. And that's normally what happens. But a conspiracy on the part of the intelligence community, the only conspiracies they really engage in is when they've made a mistake, is to cover them up. And that's typical, to protect the institution. Oh, we made a mistake. Let's feed stuff to Congress that makes us not look so bad. That's what happens. But never to change American foreign policy. It doesn't happen.
Well, Robert Baer, I thank you for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And again, I've been speaking with Robert Baer, one of the most accomplished agents in CIA history and the winner of the Career Intelligence Medal. He's the author of 4 New York Times bestsellers, including Sleeping with the Devil, How Washington Sold Our Soul for Saudi Crude. And he's considered one of the world's foremost authorities on the Middle East and is an intelligence and national security affairs analyst for CNN. And his latest book is The Fourth Man, The Hunt for a KGB Spy at the Top of the CIA and the Rise of Putin's Russia. This has been Background Briefing. I'm Ian Masters, and I'd like to thank producer Graham Fitzgibbon. And to help us sustain this program into the future and assure it remains free to all, please take a moment to support us by going to backgroundbriefing.org/donate or publictruthmedia.org, where you will find our non-profit Public Truth Media Foundation, where your tax-deductible donations, large and small, keep us broadcasting. And if you missed any of today's program and would like to explore our vast archives, you can find us at backgroundbriefing.org, where we'll include extended interviews searchable by topic, and have made it easy for you to sign up for daily email updates that provide links to resources, articles, and books discussed on the program. Also, you can find links there to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we also encourage your ratings and reviews on these platforms. Find us on Twitter and Facebook at Ian Masters Media, and please do help us reach more listeners by sharing this program with friends, family, and colleagues. And I'll be back again tomorrow with another Background Briefing at backgroundbriefing.org. Bye for now.
The guy that lived next door in 305